Hi, guys. Welcome back. This is episode 86, and we are in the cusp of winter. Is that what that's called? Moving into colder temperatures. And today we're going to talk about seasonal affective disorder, SAD. Okay. So seasonal affective disorder for a long time wasn't really considered like a valid diagnosis, if you will, and it's becoming a valid diagnosis, has an ICD-910 code now, but essentially what seasonal affective disorder is that people can experience mood changes and hormone changes when the exposure to sunlight changes. Right, so usually happens in the winter because usually our sun light availability has decreased, or if you live in places like Alaska, right, where there's some days where they don't have sunshine, they may only have sunshine a few hours of the day, or up north, again, they have less sunshine in the winter than they do in the south. And so that decrease in sunshine has a direct effect on our mood. Okay. Yes. And this is the mechanism, you can tell, right? I didn't realize that. So I have a quick little story. When I moved to North Dakota, right, everybody laughed at me because they're like, oh, you are moving to the tundra. It is cold in North Dakota. I said, yeah, that's fine. I bought silk underwear. I had wool socks, wool sweaters. I was prepared, right? And I thought, oh, it's going to be cool to live in a colder climate. And I had lived in upstate New York, and they have a ton of snow, right? So they used to tell me in New York, there's snow on the ground. In upstate New York, snow on the ground 9 months out of the year. So I was like, I've got snow. I know how this works. I just, won't get lost in the snow. North Dakota, it snows about this time. Like usually you get snow at Halloween, and it snows maybe for like a week or two, and then it just freezes. And then it's just frozen the rest of the year. And when I first moved up there, let's see, I had been away from home for college, and I, came back home and lived at home for about 4 or 5 years. And then I decided, to move to North Dakota. And so the way that mine manifested was it felt like homesick, right? Like I felt down, I felt homesick, and I didn't really understand why, because I was like, I've lived away from home for 10 years. Why am I just now feeling homesick? And I didn't quite recognize it. And so I went to a counselor and talked to them, and they were like, oh, well, you probably have seasonal affective disorder. We see it with a lot of folks who move here from out of state. And I was like, oh, that wasn't in the brochure. Nobody really told me that I should worry about that. I was just prepared for the cold. And so what actually happens, the mechanism is that when you have decreased exposure to sunlight, okay, our brain changes, because normally what happens, say in the summer months or when you have direct sunlight, we see sunshine, right? It stimulates our eyes, right? We see sunshine, stimulates our eyes. That actually, part of that goes through our optic nerve, and part of it goes to our pineal gland. And when our pineal gland is stimulated with sunshine, we produce serotonin. And then when the sun goes down, or when we perceive darkness, then that flips a switch where our pineal gland promotes that conversion of serotonin to melatonin. Okay. So in seasonal affective disorder, when you don't have as much sunshine, what's actually happening is you're not getting that stimulation of the pineal gland to produce serotonin. So the lack of sunshine is actually promoting melatonin. So we get the more like sleep disturbances or sleepiness, right? That can translate as like sadness, depression, not as motivated to do things in the winter. So if you've got a little bit less serotonin production, right, you can have appetite changes, increased appetite, that lack of motivation, a change in physical activity, and they categorize, right, all of those types of symptoms as this seasonal affective disorder.
You just literally described me for the last week.
Yeah.
It's been cloudy here in Oklahoma for days now.
Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be in winter, right? If you, even for folks who live in areas like that's rainy all the time, or like you have a really long rainy season, and you don't have exposure to sunshine, it changes your neurochemistry. Yeah. I had no idea when I moved to North Dakota. I lived in Grand Forks. So, I mean, it would be light outside, right? Like today's a cloudy day. It would be light outside. So I just thought, oh, well, they've got sunny days. But when you go outside, you can't see the sunshine, right? It's filtered by the clouds. The same thing on, rainy, cloudy days. So that lack of sun exposure reduces our body's ability to make that serotonin and balance out our mood. Yeah. So it's not in our heads. Things are actually changing. Our neurochemistry isn't, it's responding to the external stimuli of the lack of sunshine. Right. Yeah. So a couple of things that play into that, right? So it's the sunshine. We also know that sunshine creates vitamin D in our body, right? So we can increase vitamin D is something that we can do at home that can help to kind of balance out that change in neurochemistry. Vitamin D is necessary cofactor to produce our dopamine and our serotonin. So if we're increasing our vitamin D instead of our body making it, that can also help to balance mood. Okay. Now, in other areas in the world that they know that seasonal affective disorder is an issue. So like things like up in Norway and Switzerland and like Finland, they know that this is an issue. And so to promote wellness of their communities and their populations, they actually enrich their foods with vitamin D.
Okay.
So if they may have like seasonal things that come up on the shelf, so they will actually enrich their foods with vitamin D so that their populations are getting plenty of vitamin D and not suffering from the effects of the weather changes. Okay. In their winter seasons. And so we don't do that here. So we have to take it upon ourselves to do those things. Yeah. So I love vitamin D because it's an easy one. It's usually readily available in supplementation form. You can increase vitamin D in your diet with things like eggs, mushrooms, and like nuts and seeds. Usually a lot of sunflower seeds can be high in vitamin D. Some other things you can do if you're not really big on taking supplements and taking it, in a supplement form, is that now they've created lights, right? So sometimes you can find them listed under like daylights or happy lamps or sunlights. The light bulbs in the happy lamps or in the daylights, you can find daylight bulbs. And what they do is they have figured out the wavelength. I think it's the nanometers. Don't quote me on that, but the wavelength of the sunshine. Okay. So you can change your light bulbs in the winter time. Usually I have folks do it in the rooms that they spend the most time in, right? So dining room, living room, bedroom, office, and you can actually get those light bulbs and put them in your fixtures to create or to expose your eyes and your pineal gland to those wavelengths that are synonymous with the sunshine. Right. Okay. They do have lamps that you can take and like put on your desk at work, or like necklaces that shine this light on you. And it's the same concept as it's the light. It's the wavelength of the sun. Okay. Now, the sun puts out UVA and UVB rays. And I feel like I have to mention this because I had somebody recently within the last couple weeks who brought this up, and this isn't the recommendation anymore, but so there's UVA and UVB wave links from the sun. There's other ones, but those are the biggest ones. UVB is what causes sunburns, right?
Okay.
So UVB light is usually what's blocked out, like with windows that like block out the sunlight. That's usually has like UVB blockers, or like sunglasses, so it doesn't hurt our eyes. We'll have UVB blockers. That's how sunscreen works. You put it on your skin, it blocks out UVB so that you don't burn. When people go into tanning beds, all right, there are some people who will think, oh, I'm going to go in a tanning bed because it will help with my seasonal affective disorder. And this kind of used to be the recommendation. It isn't as recommended now. But so there's UVA tanning beds and UVB tanning beds. UVA will turn your skin brown because it increases the melanin, but it doesn't burn, right? And that's the majority of tanning salons will have UVA beds. There are some that may advertise, hey, come in and get a UVB treatment for seasonal affective disorder, because it has that wavelength that they know stimulates the pineal gland. But some people will feel really well getting UVB treatments, and you get them to a point, it's just like, a few minutes where it doesn't cause your skin to burn, but it does increase your risk for skin cancer. So I had a gal tell me that her dad used to get those treatments, and then he did develop skin cancer. So you have to be careful about that. But the happy lamps, the sunlights, the daylight bulbs that you can put in your house don't really increase your risk for skin cancer.
Okay.
So that's something you can do in your house, in your environment, to address the seasonal affective disorder. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. The other thing that I like to have folks consider doing right in your environment is diffusing essential oils. Things like citrus blend is very effective in helping to kind of uplift that mood. So like things with citrus in it, usually it's like wild orange or like citrus bliss, or you can do lemon. I usually see people do better with orange, but if you like lemon or you do a blend, sometimes diffusing that in your house can also be very uplifting and is a great way to address seasonal affective disorder. So it uses aromatherapy, right? Some people will always ask, like lavender works really well. I do have some folks who are sensitive to lavender, so that's why we try oranges or citrus fruit. Adding citrus peels to your diet can also be helpful. So sometimes I have folks, you can actually buy citrus peel in the spice aisle or from like spice companies. And so you can add a little like lemon zest or lemon citrus to your water or to your food, your meals. Sometimes I describe that as like a little sunshine in a bottle because it promotes the balance of those neurotransmitters, right? We do know citrus, not just the aromatherapy, but can also has some vitamin C in it, right? But that's also a cofactor for the production of serotonin and dopamine as well. So you can get that effect by adding citrus, by smelling citrus scents, or adding vitamin C in your regimen during the winter.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Those are usually, the biggest things. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of a balance because sometimes this gets a little bit controversial because when we don't feel good, like if we feel kind of more down, people will reach for like comfort foods, right? Which usually is like sugar, sweets, alcohol, like, that.
Foods.
Exactly. And that can actually make it worse. It can be very short term, like, oh, I'm excited, like, oh, this comfort food makes me happy. Or if like you drink a lot of hot chocolate in the wintertime, it's going to be very short lived. It's not going to actually benefit and balance out your neurotransmitters. So kind of, finding alternatives, avoiding the alcohol, avoiding the sugar and the sweets is going to be a much better way in addressing sort of those few down feeling, right? That lack of motivation that changes due to the decrease in sunshine.
Yeah.
So I have to throw that out there because we have a tendency, to use those things because they can make you feel good for a little while, right? Like sugar gives you a little bit of energy for a little while. Alcohol makes people feel better. This, is definitely an issue in up north in colder states. But yeah, we can see the negative effect of those actually will outweigh or will create a situation that lasts longer than the seasonal affective disorder and just the changes in your neurotransmitters due to the lack of sunshine that we can correct quickly versus the effects of self-medicating with other comfort foods.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. The other thing that I would throw in there is B vitamins, right? So making sure you're doing a good B complex or adding some nutritional yeast to your diet. Sometimes it only takes about a teaspoon a day to get your B vitamins in. Is also a good way since B vitamins are another cofactor for producing your neurotransmitters. When I bring up the idea of increasing your cofactors, right, is that if those ingredients are readily available to your body, then it's much easier to produce those neurotransmitters or produce the outcome that you want. And so that's why increasing the vitamin D, the vitamin C, and the B vitamins can be so helpful because when you are exposed to the sunshine, right, that little peek through the clouds or with your happy lamp or your day light bulbs, it's going to be a lot easier to rebalance the levels of that serotonin.
Yeah, you have the ingredients to make it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good plan. How's that sound?
That's good. I'm going to buy a happy lamp.
They have so many different kinds. So I didn't I don't know, sometimes I feel like when I lived in North Dakota, my dad came to see me at Thanksgiving. I moved there in August. Okay. And by Halloween, my first Halloween there, it snowed, and I was like, I'm not sure if this was a good idea. And so when I noticed things change, my dad was really good on like doing research, right? Like he researched everything.
Yeah.
And so when he came up for Thanksgiving, he brought me daylight bulbs, and I was like, I've never heard of daylight bulbs. Like that's not really a thing. He's like, it's not. He couldn't find it at the hardware stores in Oklahoma, but when you got to Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, it was in all the hardware stores. Okay. I was like, that's interesting. Yeah. It's much more available now than it was here. Like you can find it at Home Depot now. You can find daylight bulbs that you can change in your light fixtures. And then I have a friend who works in the hospital in Minneapolis, and she brings her daylight, she calls it her happy lamp. She just sets it up on her desk wherever, because they're always like rotating people through cubicles, right? Like you're just in there long enough to like type up your notes or to do your dictation and do your chart notes. And so she just takes it with her wherever it fits in her purse and just sets it up wherever she goes. It's battery operated. Don't even have to plug it in.
Nice.
So it'd be a good investment.
So when you say daylight bulbs, like you can go to Home Depot and there's like soft light, Edison bulbs, daylight bulbs. Are you is that the bulbs you're talking about?
Yeah, it'll say daylight on it.
Okay.
Yeah. And it should on the box somewhere say like I don't know what the wavelengths are off the top of my head. But the wavelengths that are covered, yeah, in that light bulb.
Okay.
So yes, yeah, because yeah, you'll find like cool white
Yeah.
and daylight, cool white, warm white.
Yeah.
That's like a little bit more of a yellow. Yeah, they have all different types now, but the daylight you want, and it'll still, most of them come in LED now, but yeah, it'll still be, they've just manipulated the wavelengths that are emitted through that light bulb.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's a good start.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Carmen.
You're welcome.